Welcome back. This is Kenya's Choice 2022. We're back with my guest in a moment, but we just want to do a quick check on the situation in Nyeri right now from where our Martin Munene is live. Martin, celebration still ongoing?
All right, very good evening to you, Yvonne. It's past 9, but in Nyeri County, I must say there has been rains since around 6:30 p.m. But as you can see, some people have literally kept the fire celebrating with celebrations in where Rigathi Gachagua has been now named Deputy President-elect comes and now we're in Nyeri town where the celebrations have been ongoing. Now a section of the public still here, and I just want to speak to a few of them to just get a feel of what it's like right from we start with you. Just come here. Tafadhali nataka kuniambia unaitwa nani na unieleze kwa kifupi sana unahisi vipi hii leo.
Kwa majina naitwa Njire. Mimi mkazi wa Nyeri. Tunafuraha sana kwa William Ruto kuingia. Tunajua sisi watu vijana tutafaidika. Ruto amekuwa akituambia sisi vijana atatuinua na mabiashara na kutakuwa kuzuri. Tunaomba Raila Amolo Odinga atulie aone vijana wakifanya kazi.
Na nataka kuniambia unaitwa nani kwa kifupi.
Kwa majina naitwa Marion. Leo nimefurahia sana juu Ruto amepita. Ni kitu tulikuwa tumegojea kwa muda mrefu. Tukikuwa kama mayouth, najua venye alikuwa ametuahidi atatuinua na tumefurahia sana. Tunashukuru Mungu kwa hii siku.
Naam, asante. Njoo hapa nawe nataka kuniambia unaitwa nani kwa kifupi. Nieleze unahisi vipi na labda kwa nini uko nje mpaka wakati huu.
Kwa majina naitwa Eric Nyamo. Tungefurahia sisi kama wakaji wa Nyeri. Tumefurahia kwamba tuko na kijana wetu anaitwa Rigathi Gachagua ambaye amepata deputy president, na tungependa sana kuajiri vijana wetu, tutulize, tuendelee na tukue pamoja.
Tukimalizia tuende kwako, nataka kuniambia unaitwa nani na unahisi vipi sasa hivi.
Kwa majina naitwa Simon. Nimefurahia sana kwa sababu ya Ruto kuwa mshindi kwa rais. Najua ataangalia vijana, najua kwa vile amekuwa akituahidi, sasa tunataka kuona mabadiliko. Ndio maana tuko hapa hadi wakati wa hii, hadi kukinyesha tuko tu sawa. Ruto mahali huko ujue tuko sawa na tumesimama na wewe.
That is how the feeling is like, that's how things are like here in Nyeri County. We did celebrations in all the 6 constituencies that make up Nyeri County. They were led by Governor Mutahi Kahiga and members of the UDA party who got elected right from Eric Wamombi in Madera constituency, who now replaces Rigathi Gachagua as member of parliament. And in Nyeri town we did see DMMO Daniel Mathenge also leading his troops here. But across Nyeri County we did see celebrations, people elated, people happy, just expressing their joy. We did even fireworks right here behind me earlier, people just expressing their feeling about what has happened or what has transpired. Back to the studio from Nyeri County, I'm Martin Munene.
Martin, thank you very much for that update from Nyeri County, where celebrations are still ongoing. Let's get into our conversation now. My guest this evening, Danvas Makori, a commissioner with the NCIC. Right next to him is Achieng Osogo, who's a governance and elections expert, and Steve Ogola, an advocate of the High Court. Ladies, gentlemen, thank you for your time. Achieng, ladies first, your impressions of the day today and everything that's transpired up until the moment that Kenyans are waiting for?
Thanks, Yvonne, for having me. It's a relief. We've really waited for this. And everywhere you went, there was anxiety. Businesses had come to a standstill. Literally, our lives, there was no traffic. Our lives had almost stopped. So we kept hoping the announcement would be made, except I think everyone kept hoping their candidate would be the one declared. But as we all know, there could only have been one winner. And it turned out at Bomas. I was at Bomas, but outside dancing, and everyone had the supporters outside dancing, and you couldn't tell from outside there. You couldn't tell which direction it was going to go, and I think when people got a sense of which way it was going to go, people reacted not how you would expect them to. But I am glad that it has not been as bad as we may have feared. I am glad that there's a sense of fatigue with the elections and electioneering. So I think we are in a good place. It's likely to be quite peaceful because people are tired. A lot has been happening and people just want normalcy.
All right.
It's unfortunate how it went that the commission could not declare results as one team. It would really have been nice. And especially because the four who stood aside know that their stepping aside had no legal backing. You know, it does not mean anything legally, maybe politically. I think for me, that's the only undoing for the day. But I am really impressed by the president-elect, whom I must at this point congratulate. He's been very magnanimous. He seems to already realize the task ahead of him is to bring Kenyans together before anything else, you know. The fears of 2007 are alive, and you know how things went for him after 2007. And he wouldn't want us to go that direction, and he's picked it very fast and has gone back, walked us back his journey during campaigns, how he reached out. He's been very careful to pick out during his campaign the things he said about bringing Kenyans together, you know, being a thing for the people. It was always about the people, never about us. We were just, you know, in a contest. I like that. And I pray that we continue with that spirit, and I pray that we hear him as he continues to speak to us and appeal to us.
All right. And it was what everybody had been waiting for, the announcement, at least so that they know one way or the other. But before that, Danvas, it was anything but normal. There was a bit of a kerfuffle around that. You were there. I think at some point I spotted you walking up and down the stairs and in and out. You know, what were your reflections of that particular moment?
Thanks, Yvonne, for having me. I think after your presidential debate, I vowed never to come to your show.
Why is that?
Yeah, I'm just kidding. You're a tough interview.
Here we are. Thank you.
No.
Yeah.
It was a close call. It was a close call. There's a lot of back and forth. And it's unfortunate what we saw play out, especially to the podium while the whole world was watching. I don't think it was really necessary. I know parties have been feel aggrieved actually, with the results that came through and the last-minute process. But there's a legal way to deal with issues. We should be a country of the rule of law. We don't need a jungle anymore.
Yeah.
So you feel aggrieved. Yes, there was a process. And of course, in our role, see, in this process that we've just undertaken, Yvonne, IBC is the lead agent as far as government is concerned. Any other government agency plays a supporting or complementary role, be it the police, be it us. So they are the lead. So we're always there to support. Whatever is needed, we're called to do or to be or to act. Therefore, we have to. They're the lead agent. And I think I commend other agencies, the National Police Service and other government secretaries have really been supporting them through the process as they lead us. And what we were doing was just basically trying just to midwife the process and make sure there's still peaceful transition. And it's unfortunate what happened. It was not necessary at all. Can you imagine, we've done so well, Yvonne, like we were just there. I mean, and I've been in Bomas practically every day for hours. I've slept like only 2 hours every day, making sure the process is as transparent, as clear, as was expected by law. And we have just, right there, we've just arrived. And actually, right before the announcement, before that thing, before we knew tension was going to come, if most of you are watching, everything was really okay. I mean, there was tension, palpable tension, but that of anxiety. And then, of course, you know, it all erupted that we expected. So for me, it's a lesson. I mean, it's a lesson for our country. We've learned. It was a very close call. Yeah. And mine is just for the Kenyans, just to maintain the peace. There is absolutely nothing, Yvonne, you can do. Throwing a stone or burning a tire will not change what has result. You know, last but not least, of importance, especially for our country, moving forward, which we need to, is a congratulations to the President-elect and the Deputy President-elect, Dr. William Ruto, the Rigathi, and his entire team. I mean, you got to give it to them. And more importantly, also on the other side, the Right Honorable Raila for him to do what he has done the fifth time is not an easy task, and his team. So we got to give to them. The deputy, now the president-elect said nobody has lost, and I think Kenya has won. I was here in the morning and I said Kenya has won, and let us not retrogress. We've made tremendous steps in terms of democracy and governance. We cannot afford to retrogress because there are few people who are really pushing for a certain agenda.
Yeah, and we'll come back and talk about what the future looks like as well, in terms of, how the country, moves forward together after an election, which is obviously one that, requires citizens to pick one over the other. And so now how do you bring them together? We'll talk about that in a moment. Steve, the events that took place before with the 4 commissioners, essentially distancing themselves from the statement that was made by Wafula Chebukati, the declaration. Just speak to us from a legal standpoint. What is the legal import of their statement? Of course, they said they will, issue a more comprehensive statement, and we certainly look forward to that, particularly because they've raised some, serious matters. But what was your take of the legality of what we saw happening just before Wafula Chebukati made the declaration?
Yvonne, the decision by the 4 IBC commissioners to sabotage the final declaration of the presidential election results was depressingly shocking, reckless, and could potentially set the country right on the brink of precipice. A lot will be said about that, including with their suitability to continue serving in those offices. But be it as it may, if you look at Article 138, Sub-Article 10 of the Constitution, the Constitution provides that the chairman of the IBC shall declare the final results, and that result shall be binding, except only if interfered with by the Supreme Court. The law does not anticipate quorum in the process of declaration of results. You asked about the consequences. The declaration of results and the manner in which that declaration ought to be made has already been circumscribed by 2 important decisions of our superior courts. The Court of Appeal, in the now popular or famous minor KI judgment, and the Supreme Court in Raila Odinga judgment, petition number 1 of 2017, already circumscribed the parameters under which verification and declaration of the final results may be made. The Supreme Court, while quoting the Court of Appeal, rendered itself thus. It said, the Commission is not permitted to add or subtract or multiply or divide the results contained in Form 34As. The Court of Appeal stated that, to their mind, the locus for animating the intention of the voter is at the polling station. And that the results from the polling station are sacred, may not be altered by the Commission sitting at Bomas. The results are supposed to be transmitted electronically, and the returning officers are required to fill Form 34Bs and submit the hard copies of Form 34As and Bs to the National Tallying Center. The work of the Commission is very limited to verification that the actual Form 34As correspond to the electronically submitted results, right? If there is a discrepancy, the Commission would ignore the electronically transmitted results and rely on the physically submitted results. That process of verification that does not require any form of alteration does not require consensus, Yvonne. It didn't need the Commission.
Does it need quorum?
It doesn't need quorum. It doesn't need the Commission to agree. The Commission cannot deliberate and say, we reject this, we accept this. The result is binding on the Commission. So it doesn't matter that a section of the commissioners walked out in a very unpatriotic and what can only be characterized as a constitutional coup on its own mandate. And I've heard the commissioners, you've played the clip, they have said they're inviting Kenyans to go to court to sue the commission in which they serve. as I've already said, a lot will be said, will be reviewed about their conduct. It's very unpatriotic, very reckless, very dangerous. But Kenyans need to know, to the extent that we all follow the process of verification, I have not heard, Yvonne, anybody impugning the results in Form 34As. And we said in this setting many times that that result is transmitted at 3 levels. At the close of the polling station, at the close of the counting, the result is transmitted electronically by taking a photograph of the image, which is the Form 34As that are available in the portal. They are also supposed to be transmitted via text messages, and then thirdly, they were supposed to be brought physically. Now, I did not hear anyone challenging the authenticity or the figures in Form 34As that were uploaded in the IBC website or portal. Even if there were challenges, those challenges were supposed to be brought to the attention of the commission and said, listen, I voted in Langata's South Sea polling station, Kewi, or I had an agent at Kewi, Kenya Water Institute, where I vote. The results declared in that polling station do not correspond with what is in the portal.
Okay.
Then IBC would say, no problem. We await the returning officer to give us the actual copy. None of that has been raised.
And so, if that were to be raised, that would happen
if that
at
were
the
to
Supreme
be raised,
Court level.
If that
where
were to,
then,
it will happen at 2 levels. If that were to be raised, it would have been raised in plenary during the verification process.
I want you to hold that thought. Not that I'm cutting you off, but I really need to get some perspective from Marianne Nyambura, who's been standing out in the cold for a couple of minutes, and we'll come back and continue the conversation and understand where that goes, including, you know, what would happen in a possible court scenario, because we've seen that before, 2013, 2017. Just hold that thought for a moment, Steve. And let's speak to Marianne Nyambura, who's in Nakuru County. Marianne, I'm sorry we kept you waiting, but please do tell us what's happening out there on the streets of Nakuru tonight.
Well, on.
All right, we will get back to Marianne in a moment. I believe it's raining out on the streets of Nakuru, so maybe that'll interfere with our signal. As soon as we can, we'll get back to her. So, ladies and gentlemen, just bear with me if I have to sort of interject for a moment so that we can get to hear from Marianne. But Steve, you were saying, I wanted you to complete that point.
There are 2 levels of raising concerns on discrepancies. You could raise it to the commission, and the commission is supposed to verify. The second alternative is to then collate all these discrepancies and then present them to the Supreme Court in the form of a presidential election petition. The Supreme Court will then, upon invitation, will scrutinize those concerns and make a decision whether the discrepancies rise to the level where they can determine the fate of this election. And in making that decision, what the Supreme Court would be looking at would be the margin of victory between His Excellency, the President-elect, Dr. Samoei Ruto, and the Right Honorable former Prime Minister Raila Odinga is about 233,122 votes. If the discrepancies, if at all, and no one alleged there are discrepancies in the votes, we could have known that, but for purposes of sensitizing our viewers, the court would have to order probably a scrutiny of the ballots or a scrutiny of the votes cast, and then identify which votes were irregularly cast in favor of His Excellency, the Deputy President, or the President-elect, and which ought not to have been cast in his favor. Then do a mathematical calculation and then see if we subtract these votes, does he fall below the threshold of 50% plus 1 vote?
Yeah.
If he does, then the fate of that election shall have been determined. We shall go back to a fresh election. If it doesn't, the Supreme Court has said discrepancies generally are commonplace in any election.
Yeah.
They do not
They said that in 2013 as well.
Always,
right?
and election law experts will tell you, or practitioners will tell you, discrepancies in election management or in result management are commonplace. And that is why Section 83 of the Elections Act circumscribes circumstances under which the discrepancies may affect or may determine the fate of an election, it says, where the election has not been substantial, has not been managed in a manner that is substantially in compliance with. So there's a qualification there. Substantially in compliance with the Constitution and the election laws, which means the law itself anticipates some minimum level of discrepancies, illegalities, irregularities, errors of transposition.
As long as it doesn't have a substantial
but you have to prove that these discrepancies, malpractices, irregularities, if at all, actually rise the level where they can determine the fate. And I want to tell you, as an observer of this election, and based on the admission by both sides, nobody questioned the integrity of the results in Form 34As. To the extent that the integrity of those results have not been impugned, on that score alone, the Supreme Court will not interfere with the outcome of this election.
Okay. And just to give you some timelines now about what could possibly happen should anyone want to go to the Supreme Court. We've gone over this, but there are now 7 days that are left to file a petition challenging the election. Do we have our Marianne Nyambura from Nakuru? All right, let's take that first. Marianne?
Thank you, Yvonne, and apologies for that technical hitch earlier. Well, indeed, in Nakuru County, earlier on, the moment that the president-elect was declared by IEBC's Wafula Chebukati, William Samoei Ruto, then we saw a raft of activity, residents taking to the streets to celebrate that particular win. Now, along this particular street, which is the Kenyatta Avenue, is where we saw a raft of activity. Residents coming out in their numbers, celebrating, chanting Ruto songs, talking about how it's about time that the country comes together and becomes peaceful in general, given that the IEBC had done its mandate, and now that the president-elect was declared, for them asking each other to make sure that they are peaceful in general. Now, Nakuru County is seemingly a UDA zone, according to what we've seen, the figures that the IEBC gave out in terms of the number of constituencies. Ruto was taking the lead, and so that is why we saw this particular activity, as well as, remember, UDA has also clinched a total of 8 particular seats in terms of the 11 constituencies, 8 MP elects, and 3 county seats all going to the United Democratic Alliance. And so there was a lot of excitement from residents here, all showing, just trying to say that now that the dust has settled, they were actually hoping that at the end of the day, that now that now that William Ruto, has been declared the president-elect, it's time that whatever he was talking about in his manifesto, talking about how looking in terms of the economy, improving the economy, the bottom-up economic approach, these are some of the key issues that they were hoping will be dealt with in the next few days or in the next coming 100 days. So there was a lot of activity, celebration, but at the moment what we're seeing here, we thought that it's because of the rains here that the celebrations have subsided, but we have seen police patrolling across these particular streets just to ensure that there's safety and calm in this area. But earlier on, we saw a raft of activity, expectations. Residents were expecting a lot from the president-elect, William Samoei Ruto, now that that particular declaration has been made. So, of course, we'll be here, as you can see at the moment, quite a deserted street. It's past 10 p.m., and we're hoping that possibly by tomorrow, more celebrations will be seen in the course of the day as people come to terms following this particular election, the 2022 general election, and the declaration of William Samoei Ruto as the president-elect.
Thank you, Marianne Nyambura from Nakuru County. And of course, we want to see what happens in the next couple of days. Now, as we were talking about what could possibly be at the Supreme Court, should anybody choose to do that, here are some timelines to look out for. Anyone who wishes to petition the results of the presidential election has 7 days to do so. And this is from the date of declaration by the IEBC. So that will be 7 days from today. And at the time of filing the petition, they would have 24 hours to serve the respondent. And in line with that, the Registrar of Supreme Court today issued a notice to all advocates, litigants, and the general public that Any petition should be filed exclusively at the Supreme Court Sub-Registry, and that's located at Forodha House, which is adjacent to Milimani Law Courts and Upper Hill Close Road. And that according to Rule 7.3 of the Supreme Court rules, where the petition is filed on the last available day of filing, it shall be filed before 2 o'clock in the afternoon that day. So that is the 7th day at 2 p.m. By that day, that should be the last day and hour of filing any presidential election petition. Of course, like you were saying, we'll wait to see what sort of evidence they bring forward and what the judges will now be taking a look at in terms of making their determination on that if it gets to that. There's a whole host of other timelines, including the swearing in of the president-elect, which should happen within 14 days. That is barring, any other process that will be taking place at the Supreme Court. So should there be none, by the end of this month, I believe, President-elect William Ruto should be sworn in as the 5th president of the Republic of Kenya. So all of that is happening. There's contestations, and I think what everybody will be waiting to hear now, I think for the last 7 days, we're waiting to hear what Wafula Chebukati would say, his final declaration. And now it seems we'll be wanting to hear what, some deeper statements from the 4 commissioners, on what they saw wrong with the process. I'm sure many will be asking them, why now? Why didn't you state it earlier? Or at what point did you notice any irregularities, if at all? I think all eyes will be on the 4 new commissioners. Well, are they new? Well, there was 4 versus 3. And I guess those are the questions we'll get into. But, Danvas, so tomorrow, Kenyans wake up and a large part of the electoral process is done. Yeah. There is still, more left, as we go into the transition before we move to the next administration. But what's your call to Kenyans, as they wake up tomorrow? What happens next? For those who voted for either Professor George Wajakoya, David Mwaure Wahiga, Dr. William Ruto, or Raila Odinga, what's next for them tomorrow when they wake up in the morning?
What makes Kenya great? What makes Kenya great is the person who wakes up in the morning, whether it's a doctor to treat patients, whether it's the conductor, as we call them, dondas, to take guys in a mat to work. It's the Juakali trader who wakes up in the morning. It's a trader at the NSC. It's a banker. It's all this makes great. We've been doing this for a long time as a country and as a people. And that's what has built our country to what it is today. And we must continue to do that. We wake up in the morning. It's a process that we chose and embraced as a nation, the democratic process that we've just seen together. Therefore, regardless of who was won or who was lost for that matter, we still have a country. And now we have a president-elect. Therefore, we should move forward as a country. We wake up in the morning, do what we've done, back to the grind, build a country. For the people who actually have to still look for work, the people who have to wake up and till their land, the people who have to transport cabbage and potatoes to Nairobi and cause a traffic snarl. You understand? This is what makes our country great. As we await the process and the decisions and from the principal, for us, we need to really continue to move forward. Now, of course, it's hard to say it for the people who feel aggrieved or who their candidate has lost. But that's the path we chose as a country. Therefore, I would like really to appeal to Kenyans to accept the results that have, and if you feel aggrieved, there's a legal process to pursue. Meanwhile, let's pursue the dream of a great country. Let's keep on toiling, because it takes all our effort to build this country. Let us not be incited by anybody. Let us abide and choose peace, because then we are a greater nation together. Let us not forget, like I said, and as we've had today, it is Kenya actually which has won. And then to me, I think that's a message to Kenyans. I'm appealing to everybody with great space. Those who are celebrating right now, we've seen in towns, and good for you. Those who are really grieving, it's a hard loss. It's a hard loss. It's understandable. It's part of life. It's part of the grind we go. But we come to acceptance and move forward, because that's the country we have.
Yeah, and in terms of businesses, I know today that came to a standstill pretty much. The CBD was a ghost town. But what happens? Like you said, Dr. William Ruto will now have to bring in those who voted for him. Yep. But more importantly, those who didn't. And so how do you begin that process of governance going forward? Even with all of the things that are happening around, those will be resolved. And the good thing is we know, election timelines are pretty definite and quite quick. 7 days to be sworn in if there's nothing, 14 days for a Supreme Court to make its determination if anybody petitions this. So pretty quickly in the next month or so, we should be, or maybe should I say there'll be another 60 days if they choose to, annul the results. But you have a month or maybe two. After that, what happens with respect to governance? And perhaps not just at the presidential level, but there are 5 other elective seats that we all took part in on Tuesday last week.
Yeah. I think if I were to speak to the presidential one first, the role of the church at this point, and let me call it the religious fraternity at this point, we are a people who look to our religious institutions for guidance, and we find a lot of comfort from our religious institutions. I think at this point, I expect to see them come out, take leadership, and just help us with this transition. Because even if we were to go to another election, we'll still emerge with one winner. So I think we just need somebody to walk us through that process. And in terms of governance, the idea about our time to eat, the idea about resources follow power, I think all that needs to be dealt with at this point. When DP, the president-elect, takes over, he will need to deal with the optics first. So in terms of his appointments, we will need to see face of Kenya and all of us need to feel a part of it. In as much as it never really amounts to anything at a personal level, usually you feel a part of the process. You feel a part of the country. You feel your own is there. So I think he'll need to address that one. But secondly, in terms of development, and I am glad he addressed himself to that, it needs to spread across. It should not be that development only goes one direction, so that if you have been in the opposition, then, or if you find yourself in the opposition, nothing comes your way. So I think there's a lot of public relations first that we need to go into this, because we must feel a part of it, all of us together at the national level, but the actuals also in terms of resources flowing to places that did not support DP Ruto. Now, to the lower elections, again, I think I had so many thoughts going through my head, and I was thinking about how there are going to be lots of political realignments following today's elections based on those who won and those who did not win at the lower levels. And I think even there need to just reach out. The good thing about the lower levels is that a lot of times people voted for the same block. So it was just that particular position that had a contestation. But at the national level, you probably were just together. If you were in DP-elect Ruto's stronghold, you may have had independent candidates. You may have had candidates from parties affiliated to Kenya Kwanza, but they were all just one house. Yeah. And the same applies to the Azimio strongholds. They were all just one house, So how they will react and how they will move forward really will be determined a lot by what happens at the top. Okay. And I think the greatest fear is that, I think in the first term for, that was TNA and URP. Yes. When they were part of the Jubilee Alliance. Jubilee Alliance at the time. Yeah. I think at that time we saw that the counties that did not vote for them were frustrated in terms of resources. And I think that remains a real fear right now, and there are concerns as to whether resources will follow where presidency has gone and the rest will be left out. And those are some of the things he will need to address himself to increasingly, verbally and in action. Okay. Otherwise, people feel left out completely. All right. So it's about, inclusivity and bringing everybody in. That's a great point. Absolutely. I want us to take a short break here. We'll come back and also talk about, what lies ahead for the courts with respect to other cases that might come up. We know what the Chief Justice had said in terms of just ensuring efficiency on that part. We'll have
our Steve Ogola comment on that, what will be happening at the other races. There's already some candidates who have said they are going to court and they're going to be contesting the results in their respective races. We'll come back and talk about what that legal process could look like at those other levels. This is Kenya's Choice 2022. Let's take a break. We'll be back in a moment.